Okay, so now we are going to move on to speaking question practice number 1. I hope that you have done the practice test for yourself first before listening to my example of the practice test itself. So again, you should try to do your practice do a practice test yourself first, and then compare it to the answers that I provide for you. Okay? Otherwise, you're kind of defeating the purpose of doing the practice test. All right. I'm going to use different templates. Now, the way I'm going to do it for the practice test is I'm going to take my notes on paper, and then after I take the notes on paper, I'm going to immediately do the question. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll fill in my notes that I have for that particular question. That way it can be very realistic, the same way that you would do it. I don't want to take notes and then pause and write in the notes on the screen, and then do the speech. So I'm going to try and make it as realistic as the same way that you would do it. All right. So I'm going to go through several questions for number 1, giving you examples of how to do the particular questions. All right, so let's go down to question number 1. All right, so let's look at question number 1. What do you consider the most important characteristic of a supervisor? Please include details and examples in your response. All right, you have 15 seconds to prepare. All right, 15 seconds is up, and I will now have 45 seconds to give my response, and here is my response. Communication would be my choice as the best characteristic or aspect of a supervisor. To begin, problems are something that supervisors have to deal with every day, and good communication helps to solve this. Take, for example, a problem I recently had at work with another coworker. And the manager was able to come in with good communication and solve that problem very easily. Not only problems, but also motivation is a reason why a manager needs to have good communication. For example, if a team has a hard job to do, a good communicator can motivate people to complete and do a great job. So, motivation and problems are reasons why managers need good communication. Okay? And so, if I'm filling this in, my outline looked like this. I had communication, okay, and then for this one, I had, of course, my first reason was problems. And then my second thing that I had here was motivation. I know the first one because I said earlier. All right. And that's all I had on my outline. Okay. That's all I had on my outline. And then all I did was follow my outline. I went from communication down to problems, and I gave an example. And then I went to another part, gave an example. And then I concluded. All right, so that's what you want to be able to do when you are speaking. You want to be able to follow your outline. Now, keep in mind, be fluent. Don't be stuck to your outline. If while you're speaking you naturally say something a little bit different, that's okay. All right? You don't have to be stuck to your outline or stuck to your template. The template is just a guide for you. Okay? It's a guide for you. Some people, and what I generally like to do, actually, for me, is I actually like to just have a blank template. And that way, if I'm using a blank template, I can speak more naturally. But some people are nervous and they need to know how they want to begin each sentence, and that's okay. You can do that. But the more natural you sound, the better you're going to sound, okay? And so I'm going to show you some examples of using a template and also show you some examples of when I don't use a template. And you can see the difference in terms of how natural you sound. So if you can use a blank template and give your speech, better, okay? If you need to have your template embedded with language, that's okay also, okay? It depends on your comfort level. But the more natural you sound, the better you're going to be. Alright, so here's our next question. Compare and contrast two cities you have visited. Which did you like more? Use specific details and examples in your response. You have 15 seconds to prepare. Alright, time's up. And now you have 45 seconds to give your response. Two cities that I will compare and contrast will be Paris and Istanbul. First, in regards to comparisons, they both have great architecture, culture, and food. Very unique food, architecture, and culture. So that's how they might compare. In terms of contrast, the cities have different religious aspects. Paris is maybe a little more atheistic or Christian, and Istanbul is a Muslim country. Moving on to the next point, which do I like more? Definitely Istanbul is the country I like more. For example, it's a very old city with the buildings and architecture, and the culture and food is very old. And so for those reasons of the age of the city, I definitely would say I like Istanbul a little bit more. Okay, and so that is our example of that particular question. Okay, and so if I'm filling this in, my choice was, of course, Istanbul and in Paris. And then on my outline, I had down architecture, culture, and food. And then for contrast, I had down religion. And then I talked about the age of the architecture and food. All right, and so those are the things that I wrote down in my 15 seconds. All right, and I just moved along through it. Remember, you're graded in three main areas for speaking, right? You're graded on three main areas. You're graded on your delivery. You're graded on your language use, right? Delivery and your language use, and your topic development. And so that's very important for you to be able to focus and concentrate on those three different areas. All right, and so you want to make sure that you're doing well on your delivery, your language use, and your topic development. The template will help you in terms of your topic development, but you want to focus on, make sure you focus on your pronunciation and how you go about doing the question itself in terms of your grammar use. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Like the least. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to use a blank template. And what that means is I'm going to get my choice and get my reasons, but I'm going to speak naturally about them. Okay, I'm going to speak naturally about them in terms of showing and using my automaticity, in terms of the words coming from my mind to out of my mouth. And this is probably going to sound a lot more natural. And so the more natural is the better. But I know that I'm going to have my choice. I'm going to get my choice, my reason, and I'm going to get another reason. But I'm not going to forget to give my details. All right, don't forget to give your details and examples. That's what helps you speak for the full 45 seconds, and also that helps you to give a complete, well-rounded answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the question. People travel by airplane, train, and automobile. Which is your least favorite form of travel? Use reasons and details in your response. All right, you have 15 seconds to prepare. All right, that's 15 seconds right there. Everyone, make sure you use the accurate clock. All right, and now I have 45 seconds to give my response. Definitely, the automobile is the transportation aspect that I like the least. The first reason is because it's very tiring when you travel by car. For example, if I want to travel from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, it might take 4 or 5 days and stopping several times, and that's very exhausting. That's one reason I don't like it. The next reason why I like this the least is dealing with the timing. Traveling by automobile is very slow. Instead of taking 3 or 4 days by car, you can get there by airplane in 1 or 2 hours. So being tiring and also the slowness of it are why I don't like the automobile. All right, and so that was my response to that particular question. All right. Oh, I should fill that in for you. Automobile, and my reason 1 was that was very tiring. And my reason 2 was that it's very slow. And see, what happens is when you practice a lot, you don't really need to use an embedded template. You'll get so used to using the same sentence forms and sentence patterns that you can do it with no problem. Okay, you can do it with no problem. And so we want you to really, hopefully, get to the point where you don't need an embedded template, but just can use a blank template and be able to speak naturally, saying all the required and necessary information. But like I said, if you need it to have language put in there, that's fine. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Like the most. Okay, like the most. All right. People travel around the world for various reasons. What do you like most about traveling around the world? Use reasons and examples in your response. You have 15 seconds. Stop. All right, make sure you stop on time with your 15. I'm using a stopwatch, everyone, and because I want to make sure my timing is very accurate. Okay. So now I have 45 seconds to give a response to this particular question, beginning now. New cultures are the main reason why I like traveling to different places around our globe. To begin, language is very important to me, and traveling allows for me to do this. With this aspect of language in mind, take for example my recent trip to Istanbul, where I was able to practice my Turkish, which I would not be able to do readily at home. Not only language, but also food is a reason why I like to travel to different places. For example, I can go to China and experience real, authentic Chinese food that I can't get at home. So food and language are definitely the reasons why new culture appeals to me in terms of traveling. All right, and so that is my response for that particular question. All right, so it was, in terms of my outline, the way it looked, it was new cultures, and the first thing that I talked about was language, and the next thing that I talked about was food. One thing you're going to realize which is funny in a way. But one thing you're going to realize is that if you practice a lot, there are certain aspects or certain concepts that can fit almost any question. All right, language, food, new experiences. I mean, there's certain aspects you can use for almost any question, and that's why practicing is so important, because practicing allows you to get used to that. Okay, allows you to get used to that. So let's move on to our next question. Description question. Okay. Describe a custom in your country that you would like other countries to adopt as their own. Explain your choice using specific reasons and details. All right, you have 15 seconds to prepare. Let's start. All right, stop. All right, now you'll have 45 seconds to give your response. Begin speaking now. In terms of my country's customs, I would like other countries to definitely adopt our aspect of freedom of speech. To begin, freedom of speech is very helpful for the news media. With this in mind, take for example China. In China, the news media do not have freedom of speech, and very often they're compelled to say the things that the government want them to say, whether it's true or not. Not only the news media, but also new ideas benefit from adopting the custom of freedom of speech. For example, when Einstein came to this country, he was free to think and consider his many ideas and came up with his famous formula. So these reasons are why I think other countries should adopt freedom of speech. Okay. Now, if you notice, I'm trying to do this naturally for you, and I'm doing it as if you were doing in the real exam. In doing that question, I had some trouble remembering Einstein's formula. E equals mc squared is what it is actually. But I didn't want to stop and redo it to make it completely perfect for you, because sometimes people make mistakes. Okay, and when you make mistakes, you have to be able to fight through it and get through your question so you can still get a great score. Okay, I still would have gotten the top score, of course, but because that one little mistake in saying the formula is not a problem. But I wanted to show you that when you do have a little bit of hiccup in what you're saying, to keep going, to fight through it. Don't give up. A lot of students just give up and stop when they mess up, but you have to fight through those things because nobody is perfect. And so I wanted to show you that also in my not getting that formula stated correctly and being able to move through and finish up my question. Okay?